Quote, the world potential for market for copying machines is 5,000 at most. IBM said that to the eventual founders of Xerox. Instead of airlifting someone from a scene, they can actually fly a doctor to the location. I think the market needs it because they don't understand what's coming. This is a really, really big deal.
Hey, welcome to the Air Mobility Show. I am Ahmad Malik with my co host, Nadia Park. Today, we have a very special guest, Chuck Martin. Chuck is a technology industry veteran, futurist, if you may. He has published many books and he is a voice in the AAM industry and on several media outlets. Chuck, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So, Chuck, we wanted to just have a quick chat with you and talk about the book that you have written and the work that you do in the industry. So, would you mind telling people about what you're doing?
I'm an author and futurist, and I've been following technology for many, many years. And at the beginning of the commercial internet, I wrote a book called The Digital Estate. And because it was so early, it hit the New York Times bestseller list a year after it came out. Then the mobile revolution was coming along, and I wrote a mobile book before people realized the mobile phone was going to be a very big deal. And then that did very, very well. And then I did a book on the Internet of Things because that was coming next, and people didn't see that either. That was called Digital Transformation 3.0. That came out and then did very well a year later. And now I'm seeing the electric aerial revolution coming. So I wrote a book called Flying Vehicles, and it's about the emergence of personal air travel, flying cars, and air taxis. So it's a very wide ranging industry, and I've spent a lot of time in the industry interviewing a lot of people who are actually creating this marketplace, and they're very, very dedicated people. People think this is brand new when it's really been 10 or 15 years in development. And it just is sort of coming to a head all at the same time, but it's not a new thing. It's actually been around a long time, but the public still has no idea what's coming.
Indeed, indeed. And I think that is one of the challenges that we have is the knowledge availability of knowledge right now in the industry, in the general population, and understanding of what advanced air mobility is all about and how it will bring a paradigm shift in the urban mobility. So I think this is very exciting times and perfectly positioned book, Chuck. Well done.
Well, thank you very much. I really did it because I think the market needs it because they don't understand what's coming. This is a really, really big deal, and it's not just a different way of flying. It's going to transform how people and things are moved, and that's a very big deal. These are not airplanes. They're not going up at 30,000 feet or any of that. They're all relatively low flying in the 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 feet. They're all electric. They're quiet. They're going to be hydrogen. There's so much technology involved in this, all the way from collision avoidance, automatic systems, automatic tracking, self-landing. You push a button and it simply lands. They go straight up and down. They don't need runways. It's really a transformation. And what I did in the book was I looked at the entire ecosystem of it. It's not just the planes or the flying vehicles. It's the vehicles. It's the low altitude economy. It's the infrastructure. It's the creation of vertiports all around the world. These are the places for these things to land, take off, and be charged for batteries. And it's a very complex ecosystem that's been being built, and it's not a U.S. phenomenon. It's not a European phenomenon. It's not an Asian phenomenon. It's a global phenomenon, and everything is happening literally around the world.
That's amazing. And indeed, we see in many countries and many continents that the development of vertiports, the airports are talking about it. The airlines are looking into adopting, placing orders from the OEMs. But what do you think is the number one step that needs to be done now to enable those flying vehicles to take off?
Good question. It's actually complex. That's a really complex question because it's so multifaceted as an industry. If you think about the flying vehicles, there are really three, almost four categories of flying vehicles. There's what I call the PAV, which is a personal aerial vehicle. And these are vehicles that people can buy right now. You don't need a pilot's license to fly it. There are certainly rules that the Federal Aviation, the FAA, has put into place where they can only fly in certain locations. But these are for sale in the market now. And These are vehicles that you can put on the back of a pickup truck, drive it to a field, and go fly for 10 or 15 minutes by yourself. They only carry one person, and I know you all know this, but I just want so everyone else understands the difference. So that's one category, and there are companies there like Lift Tex in Austin, Texas, Jetson One in Europe, a Pivotal Helix, Rice Aero. That's one in Cincinnati that I flew. And so that's one category. That's the personal aerial vehicle. Then there's another category called the PAVC, which is the certified personal aerial vehicle. These are going to be vehicles that will be you'll need a pilot's license or some kind of certification to fly it. They'll be able to carry one or two people. And the idea of these is you park it in your garage, you pull it out of your garage, take off, fly where you're going. When you come back, you fly back, land in your driveway, roll it back into the garage and close the door. And those are being developed by companies like Droney Aerospace, Ace VTO, Air EV in Israel, and they're being developed all over the world. Then the one category is that you're talking about is the CAV, which is a commercial aerial vehicle, and these are air taxis or flying taxis. And the big players in this space are Joby and Archer Aviation, and they're both based in California, but they've got large operations in the Mid East. Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi is doing a lot in this arena. It's all over Europe, Brazil. I mean, name a place. There's something happening there, and the people don't realize the airlines are behind this in a really big way. I mean, Delta's involved in it. United Airlines is involved. They're all involved. Uber, the ride sharing service is involved. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes. What ultimately is going to happen is this can have to be integrated with the control system, because the airports have to have control over these things to start with. The way these things are going to start, they'll start at airports. For example, I used to fly from New York to Buenos Aires, and if I was flying first class, I would get a free helicopter ride from JFK to, I mean, from the east side of New York City to JFK. So it's the same concept where you'll be booking a flight on Delta Airlines, and I want to fly from here, and I'm in Tampa, Florida, but I'm not at the airport, and maybe I want to fly out of Orlando, so I will get an Uber that takes me to a vertiport. Then a vertiport flies me to Orlando. Then from Orlando, I'll then get on my Delta plane. I will land in, say, Amsterdam. In Amsterdam, then I will get another flying vehicle that will take me into the city, and then I'm there. So it's all going to be integrated into one system. And air traffic control has to have control over this, and that will be integrated. And that's where AI and all kinds of future technology comes in place.
No, that's very interesting and very cohesive explanation, Chuck. I really appreciate that. One of the things that comes to mind is immediately when you say the integration with the airlines and the airports, the concept of urban air mobility and providing this service inside the urban environment, especially with the proliferation of this technology, proliferation of the services around the city, because it's supposed to be cheaper, more affordable, and so on. What are your ideas or concerns about how this will impact the amount of traffic that it will generate within the urban environment? And what do you think needs to be done there?
Well, the sky is going to be filled with these things, but it's not the sky; it's kind of the low sky. And the reason this can work is if you look at autonomous vehicles have a really difficult time because there's a legacy infrastructure, and that legacy infrastructure, there are other cars that are not computerized. Basically, they don't have the technology. There are playgrounds, there are people riding bicycles, there are children playing. There are all kinds of legacy obstacles for a self-driving car. In the air, there's no legacy. It's all wide open road essentially, and that road has to be mapped by the air traffic control system. Ultimately, what I see beyond AI is quantum computing. Quantum computing is the only technology that can handle an infinite number of variables. And what's going to happen over a long period of time, I mean, this is not in a year or two, it's down the road, is it can manage basically all of the aerial vehicles simultaneously with all of the variations in real time. And that's the only thing that can actually do that. And we're not at that stage that we don't need it yet. I mean, right now it'll be AI to start, and then it'll evolve into that. And companies like NVIDIA, IBM,
Yep.
US, I mean, they're all looking at quantum in a very, very big way. And again, this is another global phenomenon. That's why this is not a US thing. It's one of the first things that's really it's starting globally. I mean, it's literally starting worldwide.
Quantum race is very real. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But before that really happens, I mean, we still have an opportunity to use artificial intelligence to manage this to a certain extent. What is your view in that scenario where you have all of this proliferation happening and people are coming from different schools of life or different applications of that? How it will happen in the next couple of years? How do you see that happening in in the adoption?
Yeah, AI in this space is a given. It's not even considered that we're going to move to AI. It's simply part of the development process.
Mhm.
It's almost like saying, should we have automated something in how we construct these things? And the answer,
Mhm.
of course, is absolutely, because humans can't, it's getting beyond what humans can do technologically. And that's where AI is going to come in. AI is going to be involved in all of this. And AI will be way ahead of quantum, just as is in the real world right now. And you're looking at everything from generative AI to you name it, automation of processes, projecting things, forecasting things. I mean, in real time while you're in the air,
Yes.
because that's really what's needed. Remember, long term, these things aren't going to have pilots. People don't
Indeed.
realize that. They think that, oh, I'm going to have a new kind of plane that only holds 4 people. Well, that's not really what's happening. At Ehang in China, they've got a 2 passenger vehicle that has no pilot, and they're flying people all over the place. Same thing with Xpeng Aero in China. They've got a vehicle that it flies somewhere, and then the flying part of it detaches from the land part. The land part can drive away. Luftcar here in Orlando is doing the same thing, where they have basically it looks like a flying forklift essentially. It comes down, attaches to the vehicle, flies the vehicle somewhere, and drives it away. And the first uses of this are going to be for first responders, military. Uh,
Yeah.
military is all over this. I mean, they have been for years. They actually funded a lot of the early development 10 years
Yeah.
ago.
Like Archer,
Um,
they have some contracts with the
yeah,
military, right?
absolutely. They
Hmm.
all want those contracts.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, of course.
And well, because it's more efficient than a helicopter, it's quieter, it's less maintenance. I mean, all you have to do is it's basically just it's essentially propellers and an electric motor. That's basically what it is. So it's relatively simple. It's not like an airplane. That being said, because they're going to carry people, to your point, Nadia, they're going to have to be certified just like airplanes are, and
Exactly.
that's a really big difference, because certifying these things for the regulatory agencies is brand
Hmm.
new. I mean, they know how to certify an airplane. They know how much runway it takes to take off. They know
Hmm.
how much time it takes before it leaves the ground. These things, they go straight up. Like there's no precedent for that, other than looking at
Yeah.
helicopters, and which is what they're kind of trying to mimic right now. But they're not helicopters, because they go up and then they fly like an airplane. Because they're most of them are winged vehicles, and the
Yeah, I
idea that you
think
have tilt rotors. I mean, it's a whole new thing.
yeah, I think you're absolutely right because especially the regulators, they've been regulating the aviation industry for a long period of time and they are very comfortable in what they've been doing, right? So if you look at aviation industry, nothing has much changed since 60s and 70s except for a
Well, it's
few
almost like
things that
saying, okay, you're doing aviation, now we want you to regulate football.
yeah, yes, and that's the problem, right? The comfort level that they have. I think there are two things, right? One is that the comfort level they have is that, oh, this is just like other aviation, no problem. We can regulate that. We'll do it, no worries. And then on the other hand, they really do not understand the technology, how it is different.
Well, even to add to that, there are also flying cars they have to
Yes,
regulate. Literally flying cars, like
absolutely.
Samsung Sky, for example, has something called the Switchblade, and they have a vehicle that'll travel like 150 miles an hour on the road. Then you take off and you're flying at 150, 170 miles an hour in the air. You
Yeah,
land at an airport, the wings fold in then you're in a car again.
yeah,
And that's a very real thing, and that has to be regulated for the air, and it has to be
and
regulated
for the
by
land.
for the road, which is a whole different thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do have another example for you. I don't know if you know, there is a company startup here in Europe which is developing sort of a van, if you may, air van or sky van, if you may. They are developing a solution which is similar to what you said, the folding wings, and they have the ducted propeller system. And the idea is that they will fill in the load up the drone, and it will fly off and it will land somewhere, vertical takeoff and landing, and then the last mile it can drive, so it will just drive like a self-driving van.
What company is
So
that? I'll have to get them back my next edition.
it's a company called Grasshopper Air Mobility. There's a friend of mine. He's based here in Barcelona, and
You'll have to put
yeah,
us in touch
fantastic.
because I can update the book all the time.
Indeed, I will do that. So
Yeah, Pal V, by the way, Pal V in Europe has that as
yeah,
well.
yeah, Palwy
The
in the
Dutch
Netherlands.
company, and it's so brand new, and that's why it is exciting, because people don't know where to start. They're starting to regulate, they started to think about, they started to plan it, but there is no like a manual of how this should be done yet. And I think we are at this stage where this all is being developed. The futurists, the industry professionals come together at different platforms to make it happen. But what do you think about the public? Is the general public ready for flying cars?
They're ready for it, but they don't know it. Mainly 'cause they don't know about it. The way this is going to happen, in my view, is it's not going to be one day where all of a sudden everybody says, "Oh, I'm going to and fly one of these things." What's going to happen is it'll be like self-driving automobiles, like in Waymo right now. They just opened it up to Los Angeles, so anyone in Los Angeles can get a self-driving car without a safety driver in the car. Now, that's taken many, many, many years to happen. What I see happening with this is that the Delta or United or some major airline will start to add this as an option for a journey, and some people will say, "I'll try this," and then they'll try it, and then they'll go tell other people saying, "Instead of taking an hour and a half to drive from Heathrow to London, I got there in 14 minutes." In New York, they're converting the Eastport Heliport in Manhattan to be a vertiport. So this is happening. People just don't see it because there's a lot of groundwork that has to get done. The idea of like the air taxis is they're going to be quick shuttles. Like they land, they charge in 10 minutes, they take off. It's not going to be like an airline where you've scheduled your flight and you get there an hour and a half ahead of the flight, or 2 hours. Uh, it's going to be rotating all the time. And the public, at first, they're going to be at airports. So it'll be airport to a vertiport. Ultimately, it's going to be vertiport to vertiport longer term, which means there have to be a lot of small vertiports all over the planet, which there will be. Once you see these things, it's borderline magical. I mean, I was at an event in Abu Dhabi, and I sat in every single one of them that was on the floor, and they had all the major vehicles there. It's astounding. Just looking at the technology that's involved in it, just the hardware, never mind the software. And ultimately, you've got companies like Ehang in China is flying these without pilots. Whisk Aero, which got acquired by Boeing for $450 million US, they're starting without pilots. They're not even developing a vehicle with pilots. In the US, actually, everywhere, all of these vehicles, when for testing for all the regulatory bodies, they have to test being tethered. And I know you know this, but tethered. They're basically connected by a wire to the ground, essentially, just to see that they can fly and stay off the ground. Then they can fly untethered, which means they fly off the ground without a pilot. So every single one of these has started without a pilot. So we know they can all fly without pilots. The public is not ready for a vehicle flying without a pilot. I mean, they barely are ready for vehicles with pilots. I'm talking about just
They're
regular
barely
air
ready for a
vehicles.
car without a driver, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
Like everything else, you came out of IT. It's not the technology; it's the
I know,
people.
I know. It's the adoption of technology that takes forever.
Yes.
You're so right. And talking about integration and the vertiports before, I mean, the way I look at it, even if I can't have the real Jetsons world, at least I would like to be able to walk down to cross the road or at the corner of my block, get onto a taxi and just fly away and get to office. What will be required to achieve something like this?
Basically just time. That's all it is. The technology is there right now,
Mhm.
and in all the taxi companies, that's their model. Their model is short trips. Like we have a Tampa to Orlando. There's one road that goes from Tampa to Orlando, and it's about it could be an hour drive, it could be a 3 hour drive, same road, depending on the traffic or the accident.
Yeah.
That's going to be about a 10 or 12 minute air taxi flight, and that's where the model is. In Japan, they're looking at having these fly off of rooftops and buildings because their traffic congestion is so bad. They want to have just people traveling, just like you said, from your home to the office. They pick you up on your rooftop, and
Yeah.
it takes you to the rooftop of your building where you work, and it
It's a
goes back and
no-brainer,
picks up
right?
somebody else. I mean, that's the way it's going to be. These things, it's not going to be that every once in a while we look up and we see, hey, there's a flying vehicle. We're going to
Yeah.
be looking up and saying, wow, there's no flying vehicle at this moment. That's strange. I mean, they're going to be, because they're low flying. They're going to be seen a lot more, but they're going to be many. I mean, thousands at a time, many thousands at a time. It's not going to be like airlines where you have a flight goes out every minute or two.
Yeah.
This is going to be, they're going up like in seconds.
I mean, it defeats the purpose if you have scheduled flights. The whole point of personal vehicle or air taxi. If you have to be scheduled, then it just doesn't make sense, right? For me, at least, it doesn't make sense. One of the questions somebody asked me was how you're going to make it happen in London. London is such an old city. It's so, and I said, look, worst case scenario, you have all these different what we call underground tube stations. You can build a tiny vertiport on top of it, and you can have a couple of these things whizzing around and land and take off. Same way you go down for the tube, you go up for the air taxi, right? So how difficult is that? But it
Yeah, it's being
requires
it's
the
yeah, it's being
stakeholders
planned
to.
for London right now.
Yes, yes, yes. I know, and then there is a lot of sort of initially there was a lot of pushback for that, but then now they've decided to sort of Battersea Station have a helipad where there is a service that goes into Heathrow and other airports. It's a helicopter service which is quite expensive. I think that's where they are going to start from. But yeah, I mean I think this is where the stakeholder integration is very key. City planners and all these people who are not involved do not know, need to be educated, and they need to get involved and get started into adopting this. So eventually, given time, like you said, it will take time. Given time, these things are bound to happen, right?
Yeah, that's all it takes. The technology is finally all come to fruition. So the technology is now ready. Everything is going through the testing phase right now. There are test flights going on all over the world. I mean, some of these companies have flown 50,000 miles already, and so it's not an untested technology. It's really tested. It just as a commercial enterprise, it's not yet matured. Essentially, like the airlines have, because of they've been in business so long, they know all the details. As you know, Nadia, they know how to create a flight. They know how to create all the infrastructure around it,
Mhm.
the gates when you land. I mean, all those things are already in place. It's not one thing it's not just a plane going from A to B. It's a lot of other things. It's what fueling, servicing the plane, all these things. The same thing's going to have to happen with flying vehicles, where they're going to have charging facilities that's the appropriate charging facilities, because they're not all the same. It's not like a Tesla charger kind of thing. It's a little different, but those are being set up. I mean, Beta Technologies company here, they're setting up charging stations all over the East Coast of the United States right now. Just the electricity. So when you look at a vertiport, it has to have the right electrical infrastructure near the vertiport to be able to support the charging. I mean, as silly as little as that sounds, that could cause a vertiport not to be able to exist. Or it requires the city or the community to do a rewiring of its electric infrastructure. Then when you land, how do you get to where you're going? Is there an Uber infrastructure or Lyft infrastructure built around that or not? What happens if there's a terrible weather condition when you land and you can't get away? Can you be stuck there? Like in an airport, you can survive overnight in an airport. Can you survive overnight in a vertiport? I mean, these are all questions that have to be answered by wherever they're going to put one of these things. So the point
Absolutely.
is, there are a lot of moving pieces.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a big ecosystem. It just turns into a huge project, not just like, okay, one party just this one thing. The vertiports do one thing, the navigation system does one thing, and then you've mentioned the servicing, the ground handling, and the airline just do the other. It just becomes the whole cycle of things, just like aviation is, but it's less complex, as if you've noted. It's just there is no precedent to making it happen. But Chuck, you've mentioned two things that about the airlines operating the fleets of the air taxis potentially. Do you see this as the extension of their route planning, or is this just an additional service that they will provide to their VIP passengers or the business class passengers? How do you see the evolvement of the network planning by done by airlines with the integration of this fleets?
It won't replace a route, A to A, for example. I mean, it can't replace that because these are designed for distances that are too long to drive and too short to fly. So the logical start is airport to airport, but there'd be airport to airport that they don't do right now. So that would be a new flight, but something that an airplane wouldn't really do because these things they only go a few thousand feet. It's almost like a slingshot kind of thing.
Yeah. So, for example, like connecting to Gatwick Airport, right now, if you are flying to Heathrow, you just can't connect. You have to check out and then check back in. It's not a
Mhm.
connection. So this can become more like a connecting flight where you have a connection and a hop off to another airport, right? You don't
Yeah,
even
the
have to
idea
go
of
through
changing
security.
airports, right, like London to Gatwick is a pain, as you know.
It is.
But if this was shuttling back and forth every 10 or 15 minutes, it's a wholly different thing.
So that could effectively increase airline collaboration and increase the catchment area for the airlines, and just improve efficiency. So that's great from the
And more
standpoint of the
flexibility on
operation.
routes, right? I mean, they can sell routes where flights can come in from Edinburgh to Gatwick and then connect from Heathrow to
So
LA.
the
Yes,
co-share
yes.
You
flight
know
would be with three parties, two airlines and
exactly.
one one air taxi on a single itinerary. That's great.
Absolutely possible, right? Can be possible. Yeah.
Well, the airlines are going to own the vehicles, so just like they own the airplanes or lease the airplanes, however you do it financially. But it'll be the same model. I mean, United has and Delta have already committed for a large number of these things, so they will be built into their fleet essentially. Then the issue is who flies them because it's not the same piloting rules as I mean, if you're flying a 777, I'm not sure that you want to get demoted to flying a 4-passenger flying vehicle that only goes 3,000 feet, although it still may have a joystick.
Also, I don't think those pilots will be interested. If you are a commercial pilot and you're an airline pilot, it doesn't make sense to invest that much money because otherwise it will become too expensive. The whole business model breaks down, right?
Except it probably would be more fun.
It would be more fun, definitely for sure. I can, I
Well,
can,
Ahmad,
I
you're a
can attest
pilot.
it.
What would your take on that? Would you
I
jump in
cannot
something like
wait
that?
to fly one of these things. Honestly, I'm not a commercial pilot. Just I'm a private pilot, and I fly for fun. I have been flying for a really long time. I've been lucky enough to fly all over UK and USA as well.
What's interesting to your point that some of these companies, the PAV companies, those that don't require a pilot's license, they thought initially their target was going to be pilots, and they approached all these pilots, and it turns out that wasn't the target market majority. The target market were non-pilots, people who never were able to fly. That being said, the companies like Samsung Sky, which has the flying car, they actually are interested in pilots because you need a pilot's license for the vehicle, although they've categorized it as experimental, at least at the moment. But if you're a pilot, you can have one of these things. So the question is are pilots going to buy these or not? Nope, nobody yet knows. But all of these companies, the PAV companies and the PAVC companies, the certified, they all literally have thousands of pre deposits for purchases, thousands. Samson has a deposit from someone in every state in the United States.
Oh wow, that's
That's very easy.
impressive.
I can
So
tell you,
there's
I will buy
extremely
one.
high interest.
That's amazing. Yes. Well, looking forward to the times when we can all try that on our own. But Chuck, you've also talked a little bit about AI, and you said that it's inevitable that AI will be a big part of it, from the navigation sides, from the predictive mechanism as well. But could you please elaborate more a little bit on the AI sides of things? space and the advanced air mobility.
Yeah, AI has a role pretty much everywhere because when these things are being designed, they have to keep getting fine-tuned. What typically happens is they create a prototype and then they're flying a lot with the prototype. They're capturing an unbelievable amount of data from the testing, but they're using AI behind the scenes to actually capture and to calculate and use all that data to project. And everybody's doing that. It's not a secret. In terms of the flying, AI is going to be used. It'll be simply integrated with all of the technology that they're using to fly. It's not going to be something that someone's going to say, "Oh, it's the time that we should use AI." The scientists, the engineers behind this stuff, they are totally versed on AI. I mean, they know where to plug things in because it's the only way they can actually do a lot of the calculation and projections. So it's kind of I don't want to say standard AI, but it
Yeah,
it pretty much is.
yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't know if you're familiar. NASA actually is funding a project for Cornell University where they are looking at using AI to do two things. One is the mapping of the city, the creation of the virtual twin, if you may, digital twin, if you may, and also using AI to simulate these different scenarios, like you mentioned before as well. So, they're having a little bit of a challenge to use AI to do that. And this is why, obviously, NASA realized that we will need this technology. And Cornell University kind of was involved. I'm also, by the way, attached with that project. And I think one of the biggest thing also with AI, like you mentioned, is to recreate and regenerate that data. So, you can use AI, feed a few simulate or flights, let's say, that were actual flights, 10 flights or 50 flights, and then create thousands and thousands of flight hours by using generative AI to create the scenery, to create the simulation, like they do training cars, right? So I think that's also going to be a very big sort of thing in the use of AI in aviation in this field.
Yeah, they're actually also they're taking what's been learned in autonomous vehicle development and simply moving it over to flying vehicle
Yeah.
development, which makes total sense instead of trying to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no point reinventing the wheel. So, Chuck, want to talk about some controversial stuff, the fun stuff. Let's have some fun. What do you think about naysayers who are heavily against it or heavily saying things like this is never going to work? And,
I have a whole chapter on naysayers in the book. This is 1959. This was from, quote, "The world potential market for copying machines is 5,000 at most." IBM said that to the eventual founders of Xerox.
nice.
In 1981, cellular phones will absolutely not replace local wire systems, said Mary Cooper, inventor. 1999, the era of the PC is over, said Lou Gerstner, CEO of IBM. Anyway, so that's what I say about the naysayers. Um,
Yeah.
there are always naysayers, and if there weren't, there'd be something wrong with the technology. It means it's not advanced enough.
Yeah. No, I mean, recently we were just talking about an article, and that is coming out of a university. It's an academic who knows that they should know at least the technology, and he had 9 point sort of article detailing why it's not safe, it's never going to happen. I'm sure they will come around eventually, right?
Yeah, they do. It's okay to have naysayers. It kind of keeps everybody else honest
Yeah.
because they sometimes bring up very valid points,
Yeah.
and it's a point that someone may not have thought of.
Being too optimistic, just didn't think about it, right?
Yeah, what I have found I mean, I did 2 years of interviews for this book, and one thing that really struck me is that everyone I interviewed involved in the industry, everything was about safety. Everything, everything started with safety. Like it's everyone in the industry, they know that if something happens that's bad, it could destroy the entire industry or at least set it back years.
Yeah.
And nobody wants that. So everybody is so careful.
No, absolutely, yes, and we see it, with the attempts to run air shows involving air taxis. Right now, it's quite challenging to obtain the proper certification, and the insurances come in. I know it because I work in the events industry. industry, and we always try to tap into, the most innovative areas, but we also face challenges with the insurances, with safety measures, which is bureaucratic and conservative, but it needs to be in place in a way. And it's good because this means that we are better prepared for AAM to take off finally, and come to the everyday reality of general public.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I think that French thing failed as well. You remember Olympics? They planned, they announced it that they will be using a taxi to ferry people between the events, and it all kind of failed because regulatory issues, right?
Well, nobody wants to be responsible if something goes wrong. So
Yes,
if you're
yes.
the regulator and something goes wrong, and with all those people on the ground, you'd be in very serious trouble. And nobody wants that. So everyone is extremely cautious.
Mm,
Even though it may have worked, the issue, if there's a 1% chance that it doesn't work,
yeah,
nobody's going to take that 1% chance.
yeah. I think makes sense, especially for a young sort of technology or young new tech thing that is happening. If there is something, one bad accident, and it will be set back years. You're absolutely right. So I think
Yeah, that happened with the
it's,
self-driving industry, and there was an
yeah,
accident
yeah,
in Arizona. It set
yeah.
back the industry in a full year.
So, when it comes to educating people, what is your advice? What should we as a channel and globally as the people who are involved, the voices in the industry like yourself, what should we all be doing?
When you look at the whole industry, you find out it's really a complex picture. It's not a simple thing. When it's not just flying taxis, it's not just an individual buying a flying vehicle. It's not a flying car. It's everything, and they're all a little bit different. And what people have to first understand is that it's all different. It's someone may not want to go, or maybe someone's not going to go buy one of these things, but they may want to fly one. Like there's a company that's actually going to be using some of these for entertainment. In China, they're going to be using them for aerial tourism. So what'll happen is,
Same in
like,
Dubai, right? They want to do the tourism and stuff as well. Dubai and Abu Dhabi.
yes, what'll happen is you'll get in one of these things, it won't have a pilot, it'll take you up almost like an amusement ride. With geofence technology, you can determine exactly where these things go and don't go, and it's very, very controllable. It's not rocket science, it's very well-developed technology. So there are gonna be those kinds of things, and then there are gonna be the air taxis that are integrated with the commercial airline industry, where all of a sudden you're flying internationally, and when you land somewhere in some country you don't know, there's one of these things that takes you to the place where you need to go. So it's not going to happen all at one time with one thing. It's going to be a lot of different things happening sort of simultaneously. Like,
Yeah,
you'll be driving in the countryside and you'll see one of these things fly by a field. You think, what was that?
yeah, yeah,
And it's
yeah,
a
and
PAV.
yeah, and I was also thinking about this, integrating it service with the airlines. I also think that there will be private and niche operators or like local operators popping up as well very soon. I know that there are companies who are interested in running fleets of air taxis, even big companies who have been like Uber, you mentioned before, but other kind of taxi companies like that as well. What do you think? I mean, this is definitely something that can happen as well, right?
The reality is, everybody's going to be involved in this in one way or another, sooner or
Yeah,
later.
sooner or
And whether
later.
it's
Yeah.
an observer, hey, I see these things all the time. Then you start to talk to other people about it, say, what is this? And they say, oh, that must have been one of the individual flying vehicles. No, my neighbor has one in his garage. Whoa, what's that? Can I go see it? Hey, you want to come for a ride? Do you know how to fly this thing? Yes, I'm a pilot. Okay, let's go. So all of a sudden, it's going to be it, it's an evolving situation. It's not going to be a one
Yeah,
day revolution where on the middle of July everything goes up in the air. That's not the way it's going to
that's
happen.
not,
It's
no,
going to
no.
happen very gradually.
And we can predict all we want. Things can change as well, right? At the end. So, let's see how things evolve and how things
Yeah. Well, some companies
progress.
are also not going to make it. They're going to go
Yeah,
away.
indeed,
I mean, there
indeed.
are
I
some
mean,
companies in trouble. It takes to do these air taxis business take at least $1 billion US
yeah,
just to get, and that's a lot of money. I don't know how
that's.
else you measure it. Those are big dollars, and the big companies have raised like 1, 2, 3 billion dollars, and
I mean, I
that's what
heard.
it
I,
takes.
I I was reading somewhere there are about 600 different startups in one shape or another, which are sort of these part of this ecosystem. So clearly not everyone will survive. One topic that I am very sort of personally close to, and that's purely because a few months back, my younger sister passed away because she couldn't reach the hospital. And I'm very
Oh,
keen to
sorry.
know, keen to see how the emergency services will evolve and how this AAM industry will help that. Because I want to really see, I mean, I give you an example. London have privately, publicly funded, this is run by a charity, people donate money to it. There's an ambulance service, air ambulance service. They have 2 helicopters. They cost something in the range of 40 million, and the operating cost of an helicopter is huge. Imagine if we can have these vehicles to replace them. Not only that the running costs will go down, but also you can buy many more vehicles than just one helicopter, right? How do you see that happening? Because I really want to see that.
Yeah, that's actually going to be one of the leading use cases of these things, because they can actually, instead of airlifting someone from a scene, they can actually fly a doctor to the location, which it's a whole different thing. They're so fast and so versatile, unlike a helicopter. There are several companies. Beta, just I think about a week or so ago, they started and they've raised maybe $100 million, I think, so far. They're in Burlington, Vermont, which is not a really big state, and they're actually looking at organ transplant for these things. They're looking at emergency services. There are companies that are founded just for this purpose.
And I think, just like Chuck correctly mentioned, that this would be the main use case, and this is probably the way to certification, and making things more real, and maybe the first responders and the medical use would be the first to be certified to be transporting people.
Totally.
So I think this is a very good use case. I think this is one of the things that should be prioritized in terms of getting certification, getting verifications, and getting things out
Mhm,
in the
mhm.
market. Because it's about saving lives. So I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, it's also a use case that it goes to places that other things don't go to.
And there are seaplanes eVTOLs as well that are rolling out. But we can always come back to it in the next episode to just dedicate, because it's a absolutely uh, you
Yeah,
know
I feel like we can go on and on,
emerging.
right?
Well, it's a big, wide-ranging industry.
Indeed. Yeah,
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. And I think the thing that we can take away from this episode is that AM is the complex industry, and it's an ecosystem where all of us are the stakeholders. It's inevitably coming to life. It's just a matter of time how it will be evolving, and we're all excited. Public acceptance is one of the things that will take time, and we're all here to work on this, to educate people, to talk to people, and to be the bridge between the general public and the industry professionals.
No, I'm very excited. What a time to be alive with all the technological advancements happening, not just in the AAM and the AI field, but also in aerospace, in our car technology, self driving. I'm very excited about this, Chuck. And first of all, really thank you for joining us today. It was a lot of fun conversation. Really enjoyed it. And hopefully, we'll keep in touch and we will see you again here.
I'd
And
love to do this again.
Amazing.
you're always welcome, Chuck. Anytime you want, just ping us and we'll set up another one.
Anything that helps the industry.
And also thank you to all the viewers, everyone tuning in to watch the episode. Please like and subscribe. We will see you in the next episode.